Some people walk through life carrying a quiet heaviness, a kind of invisible gravity that pulls at their chest even when everything around them seems normal. They smile when expected, they respond when spoken to, they even laugh sometimes. But deep inside, something feels not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, a deeper exhaustion, the kind that comes from enduring too much for too long. If you've ever felt this, you probably learned very early that the world doesn't always stop when you're hurting. Life kept moving, responsibilities kept piling up, and somehow you became the person who could handle it. The strong one, the calm one, the one who didn't complain. But strength, when forced too early, often leaves quiet scars. Psychologists sometimes describe this as emotional erosion. Imagine a rock sitting in a river. At first, it is sharp, defined, solid. But year after year, the current keeps pressing against it. The water never screams. It never attacks violently. It just keeps flowing, slowly wearing the rock down. People who have gone through too much experience something similar, not always one dramatic trauma, but many small ones. Disappointments that piled up, betrayals that were never fully processed, moments where you needed someone and no one came. These are called micro-traumas. They're subtle, almost invisible. Yet over time, they reshape the way a person sees the world. Maybe you learned that expressing pain only made things worse. Maybe vulnerability was met with silence or even criticism. So your mind adapted. It built something like an invisible wall. Not because you wanted to become distant, but because somewhere along the way, your nervous system decided distance was safer than hope. And that wall changes things. People who have endured too much often become hyper-aware of emotional shifts. A small change in someone's tone, a delayed message, a subtle facial expression. These things might seem small to others, but to a nervous system trained by repeated hurt, they feel like warning signals. It's not overthinking, it's pattern recognition built from survival. At the same time, something else begins to happen. A quiet emotional numbness starts creeping in, not complete emptiness, but a dulling of intensity. Because when you have experienced too many emotional storms, the mind sometimes lowers the volume of all feelings just to survive. Joy becomes quieter, excitement becomes cautious, hope becomes fragile. This is why people who have gone through too much often feel disconnected from things that once mattered. It's not that they don't care. In fact, they often care deeply, but caring has historically come with a cost. So the psyche does something remarkable. It protects itself. It builds what psychologists call emotional armor. And like real armor, it's heavy. From the outside, these individuals might appear extremely independent. They rarely ask for help. They handle problems alone. They may even seem calm during chaos. But inside, that independence wasn't always a choice. It was learned, because when support wasn't available, self-reliance became the only option. Another strange paradox appears here. People who have gone through too much often become incredibly empathetic toward others. They can sense pain almost instantly. They notice sadness in someone's voice that everyone else misses. They become the friend who listens deeply, the person who understands without explanation. And yet, when it comes to their own pain, they stay silent, almost as if their emotions were placed in a locked room somewhere inside them. This happens because of something psychologists call ambiguous loss. It's the grief that never had a clear ending. The parent who was physically present but emotionally absent. The friendship that slowly faded without closure. The childhood that looked fine on the surface but felt lonely underneath. When loss doesn't have a clear shape, the mind struggles to process it. It lingers like fog, and that fog slowly teaches a person something dangerous. That expecting too much from people will eventually lead to disappointment. So expectations shrink, trust becomes cautious, and the heart learns to stay partially closed, just in case. But here's the part many people misunderstand about those who have endured too much. They're not cold. They're not distant by nature. They're not incapable of love. In fact, the truth is almost the opposite. People who have suffered deeply often possess an extraordinary emotional depth. Their inner world is rich, reflective, and incredibly aware. They notice the quiet details of life, the sadness behind a smile, the exhaustion in someone's eyes. the loneliness hidden inside ordinary conversations. Pain sharpened their perception. But it also taught them something else, something much harder to undo. That opening your heart can sometimes feel like stepping back into the same storm that once almost drowned you. And so they stand at the edge of connection, wanting it, fearing it, remembering what happened the last time they trusted too fully, which raises a haunting question that many people who have gone through too much quietly carry inside them. What if the armor that once protected me is now the very thing keeping me from feeling alive again? And this is where the deeper psychological story begins. Because the human mind doesn't just survive pain, it reorganizes itself around it. Neural pathways change, expectations shift. Identity quietly reshapes. Over time, a person can start to believe that being the strong one, the independent one, the unbreakable one, is simply who they are. But what most people don't realize is that this identity often began as a survival. Strategy during moments when breaking down simply wasn't an option, and when survival becomes identity, something complicated starts happening beneath the surface, because the part of you that had to become strong might also be the part of you that never got the chance to be held, never got the chance to be understood, never got the chance to simply fall apart. And when those unexpressed emotions remain buried for years, sometimes decades, they don't disappear. They wait, quietly, deep in the background of your life, shaping your reactions, your relationships, and the strange feeling that even when things are finally calm, something inside still feels unfinished. And the real question is not just why people who have gone through too much feel this way. The real question is what happens when the mind that learned to survive finally begins to wonder what healing might actually look like. Because healing, for someone who has endured too much, doesn't begin with happiness. It begins with something far more unfamiliar, safety. And for many people, that feeling is almost completely new. Safety, for someone who has gone through too much, feels unfamiliar at first, almost suspicious. When life has conditioned you to expect turbulence, calm can feel like the quiet before another storm. You might catch yourself waiting for something to go wrong, even when nothing is. This is one of the quiet consequences of enduring too much. The mind becomes skilled at predicting pain. It scans for threats, prepares for disappointment, and keeps emotional distance as a precaution. From a survival perspective, this makes perfect sense. Your brain learned that vigilance kept you safe, but survival patterns often linger long after the danger has passed. You may notice it in relationships. Someone shows genuine kindness, and part of you feels warmth, while another part immediately wonders what they want in return. Someone gets close, and your heart moves toward them, yet something inside gently pulls back, whispering, "Be careful. This isn't sabotage, it's protection." The problem is that protection, when left on autopilot, can slowly turn into isolation. People who have gone through too much often become incredibly capable at handling life alone. They solve their own problems, carry their own burdens, and rarely ask for help. On the outside, this independence can look admirable, but inside it can feel like walking through life with an invisible weight that no one else sees. And over time, that weight can quietly shape the way a person experiences the world. You might feel strangely detached from moments that should feel joyful. Achievements might bring relief instead of happiness. Compliments might bounce off you because part of you never fully believed you deserved them in the first place. This happens because the mind has spent so many years in survival mode that it forgot how to fully relax into life. Imagine living in a house where the fire alarm has been ringing for years. Eventually, the sound becomes part of the background. You learn to function with it, talk over it, sleep through it. But when someone finally turns the alarm off, the silence feels strange, almost uncomfortable. Healing can feel exactly like that. When the constant tension begins to fade, many people feel confused. Without the familiar role of the strong one, the resilient one, the one who handles everything, they begin to ask a question that can feel both frightening and liberating. Who am I when I'm not just surviving? This is the turning point. Because the truth is, the strength you built was never the problem. The independence you learned was never a flaw. Those qualities helped you endure things that would have broken many others. But sis, strength was meant to be a bridge, not a permanent home. Healing begins when that strength slowly allows something else to exist beside it. Gentleness toward yourself. That might look like allowing emotions you once buried to finally surface. Sadness that was postponed. Anger that was never expressed. Grief that never had a proper goodbye. At first, this can feel overwhelming. When emotions have been locked away for years, opening that door can release a flood. But something remarkable happens when feelings are finally acknowledged instead of suppressed. They begin to move. Pain that was frozen starts to thaw. The nervous system, which spent years on high alert, slowly learns that not every moment is a threat. Trust doesn't return all at once, but it begins with small, quiet experiments, letting someone help you with something simple, saying "I'm not okay" instead of "I'm fine." Allowing yourself to rest without feeling guilty for it. These moments may seem small, but psychologically they are powerful. Each one gently rewires the belief that you must face everything alone, and something else begins to change too. The armor you built starts to loosen, not disappear completely, because parts of it still hold wisdom, but soften enough that life can reach you again. Laughter begins to feel lighter. Conversations feel warmer. The world slowly regains color that you didn't realize had faded. This doesn't mean the past disappears. People who have gone through too much will always carry pieces of those experiences. But those pieces don't have to define the entire story. In fact, many people who have endured deep emotional storms develop something extraordinary on the other side, a profound capacity for meaning. They become the people who listen deeply, the ones who notice when someone else is struggling, the ones who create warmth in spaces that once felt cold. Not because they were untouched by pain, but because they understand it, and that understanding becomes a quiet kind of wisdom. Over time, you may realize something surprising. The part of you that survived everything was never broken. It was protecting a heart that still wanted connection, still wanted peace, still believed, somewhere deep down, that life could feel different one day. Healing, then, is not about becoming someone new. It's about slowly returning to the parts of yourself that had to go quiet just to make it through. The curiosity, the softness, the ability to feel joy without immediately preparing for loss. And this process doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds slowly, like dawn after a very long night. First, the darkness begins to fade. Then shapes become visible. Then color returns to the sky. And one morning, almost without noticing when it happened, you realize something that once felt impossible. You're no longer just surviving, you're living. The storms you endured did not erase your story, they deepened it. They carved space inside you for empathy, reflection, and strength that cannot be easily shaken. And perhaps the most beautiful truth of all is this: people who have gone through too much are often the very people capable of creating the most peace in their own lives once they learn that they no longer have to fight every moment. Because healing is not about forgetting the past. It's about realizing that the person who survived it deserves gentleness now. So if parts of this story felt familiar, if you recognized pieces of yourself in these quiet struggles, then maybe this is the moment where something new begins. Not a dramatic transformation, just a small shift. A little more patience with yourself. A little more openness to the possibility that the future does not have to repeat the past. And if this story resonated with you, remember this: you are not strange for feeling the way you do. You are not weak for carrying invisible scars. You are simply someone who endured more than most and is still here, still learning, still healing. And if this quiet reflection spoke to something inside you, stay for more journeys like this. Because sometimes the words we hear in the silence are the ones that remind us we were never truly alone.